Far from the warm brightness of Earth, far beyond the comfort of familiar skies, there is a place where sunlight fades into a thin, fragile glow. A place where colors swirl endlessly, where storms never stop breathing, and where a giant waits in the dark. Tonight, you are drifting toward Jupiter, not rushing, not traveling with engines or noise, just drifting slowly, quietly, as though the universe itself is carrying you in its hands. The space around you grows dim, like the soft dark before dawn. The sun becomes a pale coin, small and cool in the distance, no brighter than a lamp behind heavy fog. And as the light weakens, a shape begins to rise out of the emptiness. At first, it is only a shadow, a roundness, a suggestion, a quiet presence tucked inside the dark. Then, slowly, colors begin to form. Faint browns, soft creams, bands of muted gold, hints of amber, cinnamon, clay, and frost. A planet painted in wide, slow strokes. Jupiter emerges, like a sleeping giant, wrapped in blankets of cloud. Its surface, if it can be called a surface, is a tapestry of storms layered upon storms, woven together by the whisper of rotation. You drift closer. The bands grow clearer, wider, so enormous you could cross them. In the time it takes civilizations to rise and fall, yet they flow with such calm grace that distance becomes irrelevant. They look like brushstrokes, soft, deliberate, patient. Nothing on Jupiter is small. Nothing is quick. Everything moves, but moves in a rhythm, too slow and too deep to disturb the quiet. Even the storms seem to breathe. As you approach, you begin to see how the clouds curl around one another in spirals, spirals within spirals, layered motions, older than human history. There is no sharp edge, no straight line, no beginning or end. Only motion, only flow, only the soft turning of a colossal world that has never known stillness. Jupiter's colors deepen as sunlight catches its atmosphere from an angle, low and gentle. The browns turn warmer. The creams become almost luminous. The oranges glow as though lit from within. It feels warm. Though you know the air is cold, it feels alive. Though you know this is only gas and storm, or perhaps not only, perhaps something in the motion, something in the endless, patient, swirling, gives this world a kind of presence, a kind of breath. You drift closer still. Now the planet fills your field of view. Clouds slide beneath you like an ocean, each band moving at its own speed, carved by winds that never sleep, never pause, never break their ancient rhythm. There is no landmass here, no mountain or sea, no solid shape to anchor the mind. Jupiter is pure motion, a world built entirely from storms. And yet, despite its violence, despite its winds faster than anything on Earth, there is a strange comfort in its vastness. Because everything here moves so steadily, so smoothly, so endlessly, that chaos becomes calm. You drift low enough that texture becomes visible. The subtle outlines of storm cells, the soft ridges where clouds fold over one another, the curled edges, where hot gas meets cold. The shapes remind you of cream swirling into coffee, of ink dropped into water, of fog rolling over hills. Natural, unhurried, effortless. You drift lower, and suddenly, the great red spot appears. Not as a violent wound on the planet, not as the furious symbol you've seen in textbooks, but as a slow-turning, ancient storm that has been spinning for centuries. Tonight, it looks peaceful, a deep, warm oval, floating in a sea of clouds. Its edges curl gently inward, like a whirlpool in honey. Its colors, rust, rose, peach, and clay, glow softly under the faint sunlight. Its rotation is slow, so slow, you barely notice it moving. But it is, always, silently, faithfully, turning in a rhythm unchanged for generations. As you pass above it, you begin to feel why Jupiter has been called the gentle giant in sleep stories. Not because it lacks power, its storms could swallow planets whole, but because power, here, follows a rhythm so deep and so old that it becomes soothing, a giant that roars in a voice too low to hear, too slow to frighten, too ancient to disturb, a giant wrapped in clouds that never rest. You rise again, drifting upward through layers of calm. The higher you go, the more the colors soften. Browns fade into gold. Gold fades into cream. Cream melts into white. The clouds become smoother, broader, more peaceful. Above them, the thin sunlight touches the top of Jupiter's atmosphere and creates a quiet glow that curves along the rim of the planet, a crescent of warmth. In the cold darkness of space, you drift along this rim. The light is gentle, like the first touch of morning, on a world that never truly wakes. And as you float, the space around you grows quieter, deeper, more restful. There is something calming about being near a place so large and so old that nothing you do can disturb it. A place that has seen billions of years of storms and calm, and never once lost its rhythm. Jupiter holds its own time, its own pulse, its own breath. And as you drift, you begin to fall into that rhythm. Your breathing slows, your shoulders loosen, your thoughts soften. You are drifting, not only closer to Jupiter, but closer to calm. The universe around you is dark, but not empty. The faint glow of distant stars twinkles against the planet's shadow. The soft glimmer of sunlight reflects off the upper clouds. Everything feels suspended in a quiet, older than memory. You drift sideways along another band of clouds. They flow like rivers that have forgotten how to rush. They slide beneath you like wide, gentle tides. On a world as patient as time, you watch the bands merge, separate, and swirl again. The motions repeat in cycles longer than human history. Jupiter does not hurry. It does not tire. It simply turns with the universe, turns with gravity, turns with the quiet laws that shaped it long before Earth existed. Here, drifting above Jupiter, You feel something rare, the sense of being very small, yet very safe. Because the giant beneath you is not a threat, it is a presence, a slow-moving, cloud-wrapped presence that has been turning long before your world formed and will continue turning long after your worries fade. You float in that realization. The winds whisper below. The storms breathe. The bands drift. The light softens, and your thoughts grow heavy. You are drifting toward a giant made of storms. But tonight, those storms are gentle. Tonight, their motion is a lullaby. Tonight, the giant is at peace, and so are you. Let yourself drift a little farther. Let the colors soften. Let the quiet deepen. Let Jupiter's calm wrap around you, like the clouds that wrap around it. Tonight, beneath the slow, ancient storms, you are safe. You are weightless. You are held in the quiet of a world that has never stopped drifting. And as you move with it, as you breathe with it, as you float above its endless clouds, you begin to feel what the universe has always known. Even the greatest storms can be gentle when viewed from a place of calm, and even the largest giants can lull you softly into sleep. In the far, quiet regions of our early solar system, long before Earth had oceans, long before mountains rose or continents drifted, long before light ever reflected off the rings of Saturn, there was only dust. Dust, gas, darkness, and time. The space that would one day become Jupiter was nothing more than a cold, drifting cloud. Hydrogen, helium, traces of ice, tiny particles scattered through the void, moved only by the faint pull of gravity and the soft push of newborn starlight. This cloud was not special, not bright, not powerful. It was simply there, quiet, thin, almost invisible. But gravity is patient. It does not hurry. It does not sleep. It does not forget. Over millions of years, it began to pull the drifting particles inward. One grain joined another, then another, and another. Small clusters grew into larger ones. Tiny swirls became wider spirals. Pockets of gas folded inward, cooling and contracting. In the cold cradle of early space, if you could drift into that moment, that ancient, silent cloud, you wouldn't hear anything. Not wind, not thunder, not even a faint vibration. You would only feel a gentle inward tug, a slow tightening of the world around you, a soft gathering of everything that existed. The birth of Jupiter was not a violent explosion. It was a quiet collapse, a peaceful surrender to gravity's patient hand. The cloud thickened, pulled inward from all directions. Over thousands of centuries, a center formed, a region just dense enough to become the seed of something enormous. It was still small then, no bigger than a drifting stone. But even the greatest giants begin as something humble. The seed grew, more dust joined it, more gas wrapped around it. Gravity strengthened, weight increased, and the tiny heart became a warm sphere of gathering mass. There was no sound, no light, only the slow movement of matter drawn inward. From every corner of its cloud, Night after night, century after century, the sphere thickened. Gray gases layered around it. Like a cocoon, hydrogen flowed into its core. Helium settled into its outer layers. The seed became a pebble. The pebble became a boulder. The boulder became a world that had not yet woken. In the vast stillness of early space, a giant was growing. The more mass it gained, the stronger its pull became. The cloud around it spiraled inward, in soft, elegant curves, like ribbons of smoke, drawn toward a flame. But there was no flame, no heat, no fire, only gravity, shaping a future planet. At a certain point, after millions of years of quiet gathering, the world grew large enough to create pressure deep inside its center, pressure that warmed, pressure that pressed atoms closer, pressure that transformed the simple gases it had collected. The small sphere became dense, warm, slowly pulsing, with the faint heat of internal compression. This warmth was not light, not the brightness of a star, just a quiet glow, the first heartbeat of a forming giant. Imagine drifting above it during this early stage. Below you, a soft gray ball of gas spins in slow motion. Its surface is hazy, undefined, restless, like a cloud trying to remember what it means to be solid. But it would never become solid. Jupiter was destined for something different. It continued to grow. In the deep, dark nursery of space, it gathered gas faster than any forming world had gathered before. Its gravity became hungry. It pulled. It swallowed. It collected. Hydrogen, the universe's most common element, flowed into it in endless streams. Helium followed, sliding into the growing atmosphere like soft, golden mist. Small rocks, ice fragments, frozen dust, everything nearby was drawn into the forming sphere. At some point, far beyond the timeline of human memory, the mass of the young world reached a tipping point. It was no longer just a planet in progress. It was a world so large that if it had grown just a little more, only a tiny fraction more, it might have become a star. That was Jupiter's destiny, almost fulfilled. A world on the edge of starlight. But the cloud had limits. There was only so much gas to gather, only so much material left drifting in the solar cradle. And so, Jupiter stopped just short of ignition. It became a giant, not bright like the sun, but powerful in its own quiet way. A world big enough to shape the orbits around it, big enough to influence the path of comets, asteroids, even other planets. But still, a gentle giant, made not of rock, but of cloud. Its early atmosphere thickened into deep, swirling layers that stretched for thousands of miles. The warmth inside pushed outward, rising through the gas in slow, spiraling plumes. Where warm gas rose, cooler gas sank, creating the first of Jupiter's endless bands. From the outside, it would have looked peaceful at first, just faint traces of motion on a gray surface. But deeper inside, storms were beginning to take shape. Not storms of water or dust, but storms of gas, hydrogen and helium, rolled over one another. In waves of pressure, the motion churned the newborn planet like a vast cosmic ocean. Patterns formed, bands sharpened, colors deepened, swirls appeared, spiral storms, stretching across entire continents of cloud. The young Jupiter was finally waking. Its surface, once smooth and featureless, became a canvas of motion. Bands of beige and brown wrapped around its equator like gentle ribbons. Lighter zones rose, darker belts sank. Each band was a wind that would never stop blowing, never slow, never rest. The rotation of Jupiter sped up as the planet condensed, faster and faster. The world spun. A slow-turning cloud became a swirling giant. One day, its rotation settled into the speed it holds now, a full spin in just under 10 hours, a day shorter than an afternoon nap, a day on a world as large as a miniature star. The fast spin flattened the poles, bulged the equator, and stretched the storms into long, elegant arcs. Jupiter's personality was forming. You drift closer to this early giant, feeling the presence of something ancient and enormous. The cloud tops glow with muted color, deep ochre, pale honey, soft rust, gentle cream. These colors were not painted. They were born from chemistry, from pressure, from motion. Each band, a different mix of gases and temperature. Each swirl, a fingerprint of the planet's breath. Each curve, a reminder that Jupiter has never stopped moving since the moment it was born. Then, slowly, almost shyly, a new storm began to form. A swirl, a curl in the clouds, a twist in the orange and cream. It grew, widened, deepened, its rotation sharpened, its edges brightened, its center darkened into a calm, deep well, and the great red spot took shape. At first, it was not red, not vast, not iconic, just a storm, a growing one, born from the meeting of two powerful jet streams. The storm spun slowly, like a thought, forming in the mind of a giant. It continued forming for centuries, evolving, strengthening, deepening, until it became a storm larger than Earth itself, a storm that would last for centuries, a storm that spins to this day. Imagine drifting above it during its birth, a soft spiral of pale clay and pink, breathing slowly. In the early days of Jupiter's life, it was then that Jupiter found its voice, not a voice of sound, but a voice of motion. Clouds whispered. As they moved, storms pulsed like steady beats. Bands rolled in endless waves. The giant was awake. Jupiter's magnetic field strengthened as metallic hydrogen deep inside the planet began to flow in slow, molten tides. This field became one of the strongest in the solar system. a shield, a force, a silent aura that wrapped the planet in invisible power. Moons gathered around it, some captured, some born from leftover material. Callisto formed in the outer darkness. Ganymede grew into a world larger than Mercury. Europa's icy crust sealed a hidden ocean. Io became a world of fire and molten rock. The family of Jupiter took shape as the giant completed its growth. And finally, after millions upon millions of quiet years, the forming ended. The giant stood complete, not finished, for Jupiter is never finished, but whole. A world wrapped in endless cloud, a world spinning in gentle fury, a world born from dust and gravity and time and silence. You drift above it now, not watching the violent storms, or the fierce winds, or the crushing depths, but watching the calm of patterns that have repeated since the first moment the planet breathed, the calm of clouds that move like tides in a world without land, the calm of a giant that has lived long before Earth's earliest oceans and will continue living long after our world has changed beyond recognition. Jupiter was born from stillness, from collapse, from gathering, from patience. And now, as you drift above its glowing bands, you feel that same patience settling into you, a quiet reminder from a giant made of cloud. Everything vast begins small, everything complex begins simple, everything powerful begins quietly, everything ancient begins in darkness. Even giants. When you drift above Jupiter long enough, a quiet truth becomes clear. This world is not simply covered in storms. It is made of them. Jupiter has no solid surface, no continents, no oceans of water, no land to calm the winds or anchor the clouds. Everything you see, every band, every swirl, every glowing ribbon of color is atmosphere. Miles upon miles of gas layered in endless depth. What looks like waves is cloud. What looks like oceans is pressure. What looks like stillness is motion too slow or too vast for the human mind to grasp. Jupiter is an ocean of storms, a world where weather is not an event, but a state of existence. Tonight, you drift into that ocean. You begin high above the planet, where the colors are soft and blurred, like diluted paint swirling slowly through water. Bands of white, beige, and umber slide past one another in gentle, unbroken lines. At this height, the storms feel distant. They are only patterns, broad strokes brushed across a spherical canvas, elegant and serene. But as you drift downward, layer by layer, the calm reveals its complexity. Jupiter's atmosphere is stacked in vertical tiers, like floors of an ancient cathedral built entirely from cloud. Each layer holds its own behavior, its own temperature, its own winds. Some layers rise, some sink, some rotate faster, some rotate slower. Together, they create a world where motion is constant, but rarely chaotic. The deeper you drift, the sharper the patterns become. Bands that once looked smooth now reveal textures. The faint ridges of winds folding over one another, the subtle curves of storms buried beneath the surface. the delicate shading between warm rising gas and cool sinking plume. The colors darken. Soft creams fade into tawny gold. Gold melts into rich amber. Amber deepens into cinnamon, rust, clay. And throughout it all, the winds whisper. Not loud, not violent, but constant. Imagine wind so fast, it could circle the earth in a few hours, yet so smooth, it does not even create sound. Imagine storms so vast, they could swallow continents, yet from above, they look like quiet brushstrokes. This is Jupiter. You drift farther into the first true layer of storms. Here, the clouds begin to swirl in visible spirals. The spirals do not turn quickly. Jupiter's storms prefer grace over speed. They move with the slowness of breath in meditation, coiling over days, unfolding over weeks. Each swirl is a weather system larger than entire planets. A vortex the size of oceans. A spinning thought. In the mind of a giant, the bands themselves are rivers of wind, jet streams that flow in opposite directions, side by side, never mixing, never clashing, yet shaping each other constantly. You watch a lighter band rise like foam on top of a darker layer. The two slide past one another with the gentle tension of silk meeting silk. No tearing, no resistance, only flow. Within these bands, storms form naturally, like eddies in a river. A smaller storm curls into view, a pale oval with soft edges, rotating with a slow pulse. This storm might last decades, or only months. Time behaves differently here. Even temporary storms are older than many moments in human history. You glide past it, feeling the warm updraft that forms its heart. Below you, the storm's shape stretches deeper into the atmosphere than any mountain on Earth. And still, Jupiter offers more. Farther to the south, a cluster of storms merges. Three ovals spin together, their arms reaching toward one another, like dancers moving in a slow, ancient choreography. Sometimes these storms merge into larger ones. Sometimes they tear each other apart. Sometimes they drift away untouched. But always, their motion is soft. No abrupt change. No violent collapse. Only the slow reweaving of Jupiter's atmospheric tapestry. Now you drift toward one of the darker belts, regions where the gas sinks deeper into the planet, where sunlight fades, where the color becomes richer. The gases here condense into deeper clouds. They form tall, rolling towers, hidden beneath the topmost layer. Thunderstorms surge upward from below, powered not by water, but by ammonia, water vapor, and heat rising from the planet's compressed interior. You do not hear thunder, because Jupiter's storms are too large for sound to escape in any recognizable form. The pressure swallows noise. Instead, you feel motion, a slow, rising breath. From the planet's depths, the kind of motion that reminds you Jupiter is not simply weather, it is weather personified. You drift toward a region scientists call hotspots. Here, windows open in the clouds, revealing glimpses of the deeper atmosphere, darker, warmer, lit by faint internal heat. These windows are rare, but when they appear, they pulse with dark radiance, like cracks into a world beneath the clouds. You float above one now, a deep, glowing pocket. In the swirling bands, it breathes slowly, exhaling warm gas upward, a reminder that this giant has a hidden heart far below. And then, as you drift over the equator, a wide belt of chaotic but gentle storms gathers beneath you. From afar, the equatorial region is bright and smooth, but up close, it is alive, with ripples, folds, curls, and plumes, wave patterns shaped by the rapid rotation of the planet. Some of these waves stretch for thousands of miles. A single ripple can span the distance, from one coast of Earth to another, yet the motion remains gentle. Soft curves, slow arcs, calm spirals. Jupiter does not need violence to create grandeur. Its storms are vast because its world is vast. Its winds are strong because its atmosphere is deep. Its colors shift because its chemistry is layered. And through all this magnitude, the giant remains calming. You drift lower still. The clouds beneath you become thick, not physically thick, because Jupiter's air has no solid layer, but visually thick, like swirling dunes of gas. You approach an enormous barge, a long, brown storm shaped like a shallow ellipse. It looks smooth from above, but inside its edges, countless small vortices spin quietly, their motion too small to see until you draw close. These barges drift across the planet. Like silent ships, they last years, sometimes decades, shaped by the flow of the surrounding atmosphere. They remind you of calm patches on a windy sea, places where the water gathers smooth and flat. Except here, the water is gas, and the calm is an illusion. Everything is moving, always. You continue drifting, letting Jupiter's bands carry you sideways. You drift past the borders between belts and zones, regions where warm gas rises, cool gas sinks, and the meeting of the two creates delicate curls that extend for hundreds of miles. This is where storms are born. A small swirl forms beneath you, its center bright, its edges dark. A newborn storm, not yet fully grown. It moves with the softness of a sigh. Now it becomes clear why this world feels like an ocean of storms. Not because it is violent, not because it is chaotic, but because it is deep. Jupiter is an endless sea, a sea of gas, a sea of color, a sea of motion, an ocean with no bottom, no shore, no border between atmosphere and surface. Everything is cloud, everything is wind, everything is storm. And yet, Jupiter feels gentle. The deeper storms, far below the top layers, never reach the surface. Because there is no surface to reach, the planet absorbs their energy into deeper currents, smoothing the chaos, stretching the motion into long, calm waves. In these depths, clouds form and dissolve in slow cycles. Ammonia ice falls like snow, not white snow, but soft crystals reflecting the faint light above. Below that, water condenses into towering storms, lightning flashing silently, in chambers so dense that the light barely escapes. The lightning flashes deep in Jupiter's belly, like distant lanterns glimmering through fog. You drift down until the upper layers haze over the deeper regions. Only the brightest flashes remain visible, faint pulses. In the swirling dark, the storms here are enormous enough to hold lightning bolts, many times more powerful than those on Earth. And yet, the planet remains quiet because the force of these storms is softened by the depth of the atmosphere. The deeper the storm, the gentler its appearance from above. It is as though Jupiter absorbs violence and transforms it into calm. You drift back upward once more through layers of rising warmth until the pale tops of the clouds come into view again. The light returns, the colors brighten, and ahead of you, slowly rising into view, is the most iconic storm of all, the Great Red Spot. You glide toward it, as though approaching a cosmic landmark, a monument of motion, older than any human civilization. Today, it turns softly. Its oval shape stretches across the clouds like paint that has never dried. Red, rust, rose, peach, coral, the colors blend like mineral layers. In a polished stone, the edges curl inward. In vast spirals, each one a calm wave of rotating gas. You drift closer until the entire storm fills your view. The wind here whips around the edges at over 300 miles per hour. Yet, from above, the storm looks still. That is Jupiter's illusion. Its storms are stronger than anything on Earth, but they wear the mask of serenity. You hover above the central eye. It looks deep, like a well of color, pulling your gaze inward. The depth is not physical, but the effect is real. Your breath slows without you noticing. Your mind quiets. The swirling patterns seem to draw thoughts away, like water flowing down a drain, not disappearing, just gently drifting out of reach. Around the storm, smaller vortices cluster like petals around a flower. Each one rotates in its own rhythm, some clockwise, some counterclockwise, all of them connected by the greater circulation. This is one of the strangest truths of Jupiter. Its storms are islands. In a sea with no shore, the Great Red Spot is a hurricane. In a world with no land to stop it, it has lasted centuries because nothing here interrupts its motion. It simply spins and spins and spins until it becomes less an event and more a feature, a permanent heartbeat of the planet's weather. As you drift away from the Great Red Spot, moving across the broad southern belt, the patterns shift again. You see a series of white ovals, smaller storms, swirling quietly in the deeper layers. These storms come and go over decades, not days. Time behaves differently here. Storms live longer than entire civilizations. The atmosphere below you feels eternal, a moving, breathing history of pressure and wind. You drift upward into the thin air above the clouds, where Jupiter curves away into darkness. From here, the entire planet looks like a living painting. Soft stripes wrap the sphere in warm tones. Storms swirl in delicate spirals. Shadows stretch across the bands, all of it moving in slow, rhythmic waves. An ocean made not of water, but of gas and time. And now you understand why this world feels like a place to rest. Not because it is peaceful. Jupiter is never truly at peace, but because its motion is so large, so slow, so continuous, that your mind begins to drift with it. The storms become breaths, the bands become heartbeats, the clouds become waves, and the giant beneath you becomes a living lullaby, a reminder that motion does not need to be hurried to be powerful, that storms do not need to be violent to be awe-inspiring, that giants do not need to roar to be felt. Jupiter is an ocean of storms, vast, endless, and soft in its own way. And tonight, you are drifting through that ocean, carried by the calm of a world made from wind, breathing in its quiet, resting in its rhythm, feeling the slow, ancient pulse of a giant that has been moving since the dawn of the solar system and will keep moving long after your thoughts fade into sleep. The closer you drift toward Jupiter's southern hemisphere, the more a single feature begins to pull at your attention. Not suddenly, not abruptly, but in a slow, magnetic way, as though your eyes are being guided by a presence older than memory. The giant storms blend into one another across the planet, but this one is different. It rises from the bands, not with violence, but with significance, a quiet, ancient significance, like a monument built by wind instead of hands. This is the Great Red Spot. Its shape emerges first, long before its color becomes clear. A vast oval, smooth around the edges, slightly indented in the middle, spinning with the patience of centuries. Then the colors begin to sharpen. Burnt sienna, rose, clay, soft rust, peach and coral, faded terracotta swirling with pale cream. It is not just red. It is every shade that red becomes when mixed with time and motion and the quiet breath of a world made of storms. You drift closer. The sheer scale of it slowly reveals itself, not in a way that overwhelms, but in a way that expands your sense of proportion. The storm is larger than Earth, a tempest whose edges stretch wider than continents, a vortex so vast that you could fit entire oceans inside it and still have room for mountains. But it does not roar. It turns, slowly, softly, like a lullaby written in spirals. The winds inside the Great Red Spot move at hundreds of miles per hour, but from above, from the vantage of your drifting orbit, they are velvet, smooth, rhythmic, hypnotic. Nothing here jerks. Nothing snaps. Nothing leaps suddenly into motion. Everything flows. With ancient certainty, you drift down toward the upper cloud tops, where the colors blend in long, curved arcs. From this altitude, the storm feels less like weather and more like art, a canvas of movement painted by heat, pressure, and time. The outer bands are pale and creamy, softly outlined with darker rims. They swirl inward in wide sweeping strokes that wrap the storm like ribbons. Each ribbon is a current. Each current is a wind. Each wind is a thread woven into the fabric of this giant. Deeper inside, the colors darken, The spirals narrow, the motion tightens into smooth loops that never break. You drift lower. The contrast increases. Subtle shadows reveal deeper folds, where gas plunges downward into the storm's belly. Other regions puff upward, rising like soft hills on a boiling sea. The deeper layers are warmer in color, not because they are hot in any way you'd feel, but because of the chemistry and the pressure that shape the hues of Jupiter's clouds. This storm is not simply red because of dust or sunsets or reflections. Its color is born from molecules, from sunlight interacting with long chains of carbon, from heat rising from deep within the planet, from ammonia and sulfur, from the chemistry of a world that has never known a solid surface. The red is not painted, it is lived. As you drift even closer, textures begin to appear. Soft ridges, gentle curls, wisps that seem to drift free before folding back into the great spiral. The surface of the storm looks both solid and impossibly fluid, as if you could run your hand along it, and it would feel like warm satin, rippling beneath your touch. Of course, you cannot touch it. Nothing solid exists here, but the illusion of tangibility is strong and strangely comforting. You hover above the storm's center, the great oval that has spun for at least 350 years. Some say longer. Some suspect it has existed for half a millennium or more. Imagine that longevity. Imagine a storm that predates your oldest stories, your oldest cities, your oldest memories. Imagine a weather system that has watched Earth's civilizations rise and fall, while it continued to turn in perfect silence. The Great Red Spot is old, in a way that humbles the mind, but age has softened it. The outer regions used to be taller, their edges sharper. Its color once burned brighter, a deep brick red, glowing against the pale bands around it. But storms grow older as planets turn, and this one, this ancient, wandering vortex, has mellowed. Its reds have faded into warmer tones. Its boundaries have softened. Its size has slowly shrunk, yet its essence remains intact. Its lullaby remains eternal. You drift a bit closer, feeling the pull of the motion, even though no force touches you. The spiral pattern draws your gaze inward, slowly, gently, hypnotically. If you listen closely, not with your ears, but with your sense of rhythm, you can almost hear the storm's slow turning. The flow of ammonia clouds, curling like soft ribbons, the deeper layers rising and falling in warm convection loops. The faint rhythmic circulation, guided by Jupiter's jet streams. The storm does not simply spin, it breathes. Warm gas rises from within, like an exhale. Cool gas sinks, like an inhale. A planet-sized breath, repeating endlessly. In a world without lungs, you drift along the storm's northern edge now. The winds pull themselves into smooth arcs, carving gentle grooves that look like the grain of polished wood. The sunlight, faint and diluted, reflects off these grooves and creates subtle highlights, glimmers of warm gold against deep red. The beauty of Jupiter is in these details, the small motions. Beneath the grand motion, a tiny swirl forms near the storm's rim. It is pale, almost white, a small, rotating bead, caught in the gravity of the greater vortex. This small storm is the size of a continent, and yet it looks like a speck in the giant's embrace. Jupiter does not diminish things. It simply expands perspective. A storm that would dominate Earth becomes a note. In Jupiter's endless symphony, you drift slowly around the vortex, following its curvature, like a spacecraft tracing the outline of a sleeping creature. Occasionally, you see turbulence, small, chaotic curls, where the storm interacts with the band above it. They look like the foam that forms at the edge of a wave, delicate, temporary, gone before it can be fully seen. Those chaotic curls bring new gas into the giant's rotation. They feed it, sustain it, shape it. The Great Red Spot is not a closed system. It is a dialogue between jet streams, temperatures, and pressure gradients. A call and response, written in wind. The more you watch, the more you begin to sense a quiet intelligence in the storm's movement. Not consciousness, not thought, but pattern, memory, consistency, a signature of a world that repeats itself. With infinite patience, you drift lower to see the storm from an angle, the curvature of the giant beneath you, the slow tilt of the bands, the deep indentation of the vortex. It looks almost like a bowl, carved into the cloud tops, its sides sloping gently inward toward the center. But the bowl is made of gas, a hollow sculpted by motion rather than by chisel. Imagine placing a hand above the center and feeling warmth rising, not heat like fire, but heat like breath. This storm has been exhaling for centuries. You drift upward again to take in the full picture. The spot sits like a single glowing eye on the face of Jupiter, not menacing, not watchful, just enduring. The giant's ancient gaze turned not outward, but inward, toward its own infinite motion. And as you drift, you realize why astronomers and dreamers alike have been captivated by this storm for generations, because it is not simply a storm, it is a story of time, of motion, of persistence, of beauty that does not need perfection to be eternal. You drift farther back, letting the storm shrink slightly. In your view, the curves blend, the colors soften, the entire structure becomes a single, calm shape, an oval of quiet power, spinning slowly against the soft bands of Jupiter. And now, in this gentle distance, you feel the lullaby of a storm that has been turning longer than memory, longer than history, longer than the concept of time, as humans know it, a soothing rhythm written in wind and heat and motion. The lullaby says, there is no need to hurry. There is no need to fear change. There is no need to resist flow. Everything moves, everything turns, everything cycles, and everything, even storms, softens with time. You let those words sink into your thoughts. As you drift slightly higher, the Great Red Spot begins to look small again, still vast, still ancient, but no longer overwhelming. It has become a symbol of patience, a symbol of endurance, a symbol of quiet strength in a world made entirely of motion. From above, Jupiter's storms stretch out endlessly, bands and curls and swirls, painting the giant in patterns that never repeat, but always rhyme. The great red spot is part of that rhyme, a single stanza in a poem written in atmosphere. You drift farther still until the storm becomes a warm blot of color on the curve of the planet. You watch it turn slowly, steadily, faithfully, a rhythm that has remained constant through every change the solar system has ever seen. And as Jupiter rotates beneath you, you feel yourself rotating too, falling into its cadence, cradled by its calm, lulled by its ancient breath. This is the great red lullaby, the song of a storm that has never slept, yet somehow helps you rest. You drift with it a little longer, breathing in its rhythm, feeling its steadiness, soften your own, and then, gently, you pull away, not leaving the storm behind, but carrying its lullaby with you as you drift deeper into the quiet ocean of Jupiter's clouds. In the quiet dark that surrounds Jupiter, far beyond the gentle glow of its swirling clouds, there drifts a family of worlds, small, cold, ancient worlds that follow the giant. Like lanterns carried behind a wandering traveler, they do not shine with their own light. They borrow it, soft reflections of the distant sun, smeared across their frozen surfaces and scattered like pale whispers into the blackness of space. There are dozens of these moons, some tiny as mountains, some larger than Mercury, some fractured, some smooth, some volcanic, some covered in miles of ice. Jupiter does not move alone. It travels through its endless orbit, with these companions drifting beside it, each one following a quiet path, traced by gravity's hands. Tonight, you drift toward them, not quickly, not urgently, but with the same slow calm that the moons themselves carry. Each one has a story. Each one has a character. Each one holds a kind of quiet beauty that arises not from brightness, but from endurance. You begin with the farthest, the outer lanterns, small pieces of rock and ice, captured long ago by Jupiter's immense gravity. These outer moons are faint, barely visible in the starlight. They drift slowly, their orbits stretched out like long thoughts, trailing behind the giant. Their shapes are irregular, their colors muted, their surfaces scarred by ancient collisions. But even they carry a certain peace, the peace of loneliness, of distance, of unhurried movement. You drift past them as though passing by stones, resting on a silent riverbed. Nothing stirs here. Nothing breaks the calm. These moons have slept for billions of years. Closer in, the moons grow larger, rounder, more defined. Their surfaces catch more light, glowing gently, as Jupiter reflects the sun onto them like a soft lamp. One of the first to greet you is Callisto. Callisto is quiet, older than any geological feature on Earth. Its entire surface is a mosaic of craters, scars from impacts, as old as the solar system itself. But nothing about these scars feels violent now. Time has softened them. Ice has filled their shadows. Dust has gentled their edges. Callisto looks like an old painting, its colors muted by the centuries. Grays and browns, layered with pale frost, speckled with white marks of crater rims, all blended into a calming tapestry. There is no activity here, no volcanoes, no oceans, no atmosphere, only silence. A silence so complete that it feels sacred. If you drift above Callisto's surface, you would see nothing move. Not a cloud, not a wave, not even a hint of wind. The only motion would be your own shadow, gliding softly across ancient ice. Callisto is a lantern of stillness, a reminder that beauty can be found in age and quiet endurance. You drift onward, deeper into Jupiter's realm, and another moon emerges. A giant among giants, Ganymede, the largest moon in the solar system, bigger than Mercury, bigger than Pluto, a world so massive it could almost be a planet in its own right. But Ganymede does not boast. It glows softly, with shades of gray and frost, etched with lines and grooves that cross its surface. Like the cracks in an ancient shell, Ganymede carries its own magnetic field, a rare trait among moons. This field hugs the surface with quiet strength, protecting it like a faint, invisible cocoon. As you drift closer, you see two worlds combined. The dark, older regions, covered in craters, and the lighter, younger ones, scored with long faults that stretch for hundreds of miles. These lines look like frozen rivers flowing across stone, but they are the memories of tectonic stretching. Long ago, nothing moves now. The moon is calm, frozen, silent. If Callisto is the elder, Ganymede is the historian, holding stories in its scars, preserving memories. In every frozen ridge, you drift past it slowly, letting its immense presence fill your vision before gently shrinking into the distance. Now you approach one of the most hauntingly beautiful worlds in the solar system, Europa. Smaller than our moon, colder than any night on Earth, but beneath its smooth, white crust lies an entire ocean, a dark, deep, endless ocean that whispers with possibility. Europa glows like a pearl in the dim sunlight. Its surface is smooth, too smooth for a moon made of rock, crisscrossed by long, reddish lines that run across it like cracks on frozen glass. But they are not cracks. Not in the way ice cracks on Earth. They are shifting plates of frozen water floating above a world of liquid. Europa's ice crust slides, twists, and freezes again over the ocean miles below. An ocean kept warm, not by sunlight. No sunlight reaches that deep, but by tidal heating, by the constant flexing. From Jupiter's gravity, you drift closer, and the surface details sharpen. Dark lines, pale patches, smooth plains, mottled regions that look almost like snowdrifts. Europa is quiet, deceptively quiet. But beneath that silence, lies a sea that may hold more water than all of Earth's oceans combined. And with water comes possibility, not certainty, not life as we know it, but the possibility of something moving, something drifting, something living. In that cold darkness, Europa feels like a sleeping secret, a lantern whose flame burns beneath the surface instead of above it. You drift past Europa, carrying its quiet mystery with you, and feel a change in the air, a kind of tension, not dangerous, but lively. Ahead is a world that does not rest. Io, a moon of fire, orbiting a planet of storms. The contrast is striking. Jupiter, made entirely of gas, and Io, made entirely of turmoil. Io is the most volcanic body in the solar system. Its surface is a canvas of sulfur, gold and red and black, stained by eruptions that never stop. But from a distance, Io does not look violent. It looks warm, like a glowing ember, with soft patches of yellow and orange. You drift closer and see volcanic plumes rising silently into space. Plumes that reach hundreds of miles high, but leave no sound, no shockwave, no thunder. Just motion, slow, graceful, ancient. The moon stretches below you, like a world in eternal transformation. Lava flows freeze and melt again, in cycles that continue, with every orbit. As Io passes near Jupiter, the pull of gravity stretches it, heats it, makes it tremble from the inside out. This tidal heating is what fuels the volcanoes, what paints Io in shifting colors. And yet, despite its turmoil, Io moves calmly through the darkness. No atmosphere, no wind, no sound, only the silent glow of molten lakes, cooling in the night. Io is a lantern of fire, but a silent fire, a fire that burns without a crackle or hiss. You drift away slowly, letting the warmth of its colors fade into Jupiter's night. Beyond Io, a small shadow emerges, Amalthea. Irregular, reddish, shaped almost like a drifting stone. It is not large, it is not bright, but its presence near the giant is poetic. It circles Jupiter, quietly, as though staying close, to keep the giant company. Around it, faint rings of dust glitter like spiderweb threads, catching the dim light. These inner rings are not grand, like Saturn's. They are soft, delicate, barely visible, more suggestion than structure. Amalthea glides through them, like a lantern drifting through mist. Now Jupiter's largest moons fall behind you as you drift inward again toward the giant's glow. There are small inner moons, Metis, Adrastea, Thebe, tiny worlds, shaped by gravity into gentle curves. They orbit fast, so fast that they circle Jupiter in mere hours. But from your vantage point, they move like slow beads on invisible strings. Each one glows faintly with reflected sunlight. Each one drifts past with the softness of a thought. You move outward again to view the entire system at once. Jupiter hangs in the center, a golden giant wrapped in cloud. Around it, its moons drift, like lanterns circling a fire. Each lantern casts its own glow. Ganymede, large and steady. Callisto, quiet and old. Europa, smooth and secretive. Io, warm and restless. Dozens more, each one a small, unique world. Together, they create a scene that feels less like astronomy and more like poetry, a cosmic dance of worlds, held together, not by chaos, but by balance. You drift through them slowly, letting the calm of the system wrap around you. Here, distance is gentle. Silence is infinite. Time is measured in orbits, not hours. Each moon follows its path faithfully, never hurrying, never stopping, never straying. There is peace. In predictable motion, peace. In ancient rhythm, peace. In the slow gravity that binds these worlds together. As you drift farther back, your view widens. You see Jupiter glowing, its bands swirling softly. You see its moons spread out in long, delicate arcs. You see the blackness of space, stretched like velvet, behind them, and you feel something deep in your chest. A sense of perspective. Jupiter is enormous, a giant of storms, but its moons give it context. Its moons give it poetry. Its moons give it company. They are the soft lights that follow the giant through the cold dark. They are lanterns floating in a void that would otherwise feel too empty. You drift among them, feeling the gentle pull of their collective gravity, the subtle rhythm of their orbits. The silence here is not loneliness. It is companionship, a family of worlds moving together. Through space, you breathe slowly. You rest in the quiet. You let Jupiter's lanterns lead you deeper into calm. These moons have existed since the solar system was young. They will continue drifting long after the memories of humanity have faded like dust. But tonight, you are here with them, moving with their rhythm, feeling their quiet presence, listening to their silent glow. Moons like lanterns, lanterns like dreams, dreams drifting through the dark. And as you close your eyes, within this peaceful system, you begin to feel the weight of sleep gather softly around you, because this moonlit realm, this quiet family of drifting worlds, is perhaps one of the calmest places in all the solar system, a place where even giants and fire and ancient ice move gently, where silence is not empty, but full of rhythm, full of patience, full of quiet companionship. You drift deeper, letting Jupiter's lanterns light the dark. As you move into sleep, in the vast silence surrounding Jupiter, long after the sunlight has thinned into a pale, distant glow, and long after the warmth of the inner planets has dissolved into memory, gravity begins to reveal itself not as a force, but as a rhythm, a pattern, a quiet pulse that shapes everything around the giant planet. Even from afar, you can sense it. Not in the body, not in the ear, not in any physical way, but in the slow pull of motion The way the moons drift, the way the clouds turn, the way the storms breathe. Jupiter is not just a world. It is a conductor, a silent orchestrator guiding dozens of moons, swirling storms, magnetic tides, and drifting dust into an ancient, unbroken dance. You float above this vast, moving system, feeling the presence of gravity the way one feels the slow beat of a deep drum. Not loud, not sharp, just steady, a rhythm as old as the solar system. The first thing you notice is how everything moves with purpose. The moons do not wander. The rings do not drift aimlessly. The storms do not twist without cause. Every motion finds its place. Jupiter's gravity holds them all. Not tightly, not harshly, but firmly, like a gentle hand on a child's shoulder, steadying them as they walk. You drift closer to the planet, and gravity's rhythm becomes more obvious. The clouds below you stretch in long bands that wrap the entire world. They circle the giant endlessly, guided by the planet's rapid rotation and the deep gravitational well beneath. The bands flow smoother than any ocean current on Earth. Broad rivers of gas moving around the planet with unwavering consistency. Some bands rise, some sink, some twist together at their borders, creating whirlpools hundreds of miles across. But all of them, without exception, move to the same silent beat. You drift low enough to watch a curve of cloud glide beneath your feet. A creamy white band that seems to slide effortlessly across the golden surface. The top of the cloud looks soft, like whipped frost. Its edges curl gently as it meets a darker band, the two currents weaving around each other instead of colliding. Gravity does not force chaos. It guides harmony. The deeper the band, the warmer it becomes. The lighter the color, the higher it floats. These clouds rise and fall in time with Jupiter's internal heat, with warmth rising from the compressed depths below, cooled gas sinking back down in slow, continuous loops. This convection cycle, rising, falling, rising again, is another form of rhythm, a breath, a pulse, a cycle that never stops. You drift above one such region now, a place where warm gas rises in great plumes beneath the cloud tops. From above, you see only soft patterns, swirls of pale gold and ivory blending into one another. But beneath that beauty lies motion so vast that it has shaped Jupiter's atmosphere for billions of years. Warmth rises, coolness falls. Gravity decides the pace, and the planet breathes. Not in sudden inhalations like a creature, but in slow circulations that span hundreds of miles. Breathing is a human word, but the metaphor fits, because Jupiter feels alive in its movement. Everything that happens here, every storm, every band, every swirl, is gravity's choreography. Even the smallest storm is following the same rhythm. A tiny swirl appears below you, a pale oval tucked between two larger bands. It spins gently, like a leaf caught in a wide, slow river. This little storm will live for years, maybe decades. It will drift along the band, wrap around the planet many times, change shape, merge with others, and eventually fade. Its entire life is one long dance with gravity. You drift higher again, far enough to see a broader view of Jupiter's atmosphere. From this height, the planet's motion feels even more unified. Bands slide in parallel. Storms rotate in beautiful spirals. Smaller eddies form and dissolve, Dark and light regions stretch across the entire sphere with elegant consistency. Gravity is not just a force keeping everything in place. It is the tempo of Jupiter's weather. You drift higher still, until the curve of the planet becomes unmistakable. A massive arc of swirling color set against the deep black. Beyond the cloud tops, you see the first hints of Jupiter's magnetic field. Not with your eyes, but with the awareness of its presence. The magnetic field is invisible, but powerful. It stretches far beyond the planet, shaping the paths of charged particles and influencing the rhythm of the entire Jovian system. Jupiter's magnetosphere is enormous, so vast that it could swallow the sun's entire visible disk, so wide that it dominates the space around it, like a great, invisible cocoon. But even this field, with all its strength, moves in rhythm. It turns with the planet. It pulses with Jupiter's rotation. It carries particles in looping arcs that follow predictable paths. It hums, not with sound, but with motion. You drift into this magnetic region, feeling the faint, ghost-like presence of charged particles streaming past. This, too, is gravity's work. Gravity shaping the planet's interior. The interior fueling the dynamo of metallic hydrogen, the dynamo creating the magnetic field adding a new layer to Jupiter's rhythm. You drift back toward the moons, and gravity's influence becomes even more beautiful. The moons move as if attached by threads. Thread lights so delicate you cannot see them, yet so strong they never break. Io moves closest, a world of fire, forever tugged and stretched by Jupiter's pull. Its orbit is a cycle of tension and release, a rhythm that heats its core and fuels its volcanic heart. Europa follows, caught in the same gravitational dance. But where Io responds with fire, Europa responds with water. Its hidden ocean tides rise and fall, in time with the pull of Jupiter, warming the depths of a sea that never touches sunlight. Ganymede and Callisto wobble gently in their orbits, their paths guided not only by Jupiter, but by the tug of one another. This entire system, dozens of moons, rings of dust, belts of gas, magnetic tides, moves in a set of resonances. A cosmic orchestra where each moon plays its part, in time with the giant. Take Io, Europa, and Ganymede. Their orbits lock together in a gravitational pattern. So perfect, it feels like a heartbeat. Every time Ganymede orbits once, Europa orbits twice. Io orbits 4 times. 4, 2, 1. A repeating rhythm, a cosmic chord. And this chord shapes their worlds, heating Io, stirring Europa's ocean, gently flexing Ganymede's interior. This is gravity as music, gravity as tide, gravity as breath, gravity as lullaby. You drift through the paths of the moons, watching their orbits curve in slow arcs that wrap around Jupiter with serene complexity. Io's orbit is fast, a looping streak of warm color. Europa's is softer, a pale track reflecting the sun like ice. Ganymede's is broader, a steady, confident path. Callisto drifts in wide solitude, untouched by the resonances that guide its siblings. Their motions never collide, never misalign, never lose their synchronicity. Gravity keeps them in rhythm, Even the faint dust rings, barely visible except at the right angle, follow this choreography. They circle the giant in thin, glowing arcs, their particles occasionally perturbed by the passing of tiny moons. But they always settle back into equilibrium. Everything near Jupiter settles into some kind of balance, except the storms, and yet even they follow rules. The great red spot turns. In time with the winds, the white ovals drift in predictable patterns. The belts thicken where warm gas rises, and thin where it cools. Patterns appear, frequencies repeat, cycles continue. Gravity holds the tempo, motion follows the tempo, storms become the melody. You drift down again, returning to Jupiter's cloud tops, where the rhythm becomes intimate, almost personal. Here, the winds slide past beneath you, like ribbons being pulled across a table. They move faster than anything on Earth, but they do so with incredible smoothness, as though the atmosphere has been polished over time. Each swirl of color is shaped by Coriolis forces, acting on rising and sinking gas. Each band determines the speed and direction of the next. Each border between light and dark regions is an atmospheric tension line where storms form naturally. This tension is not conflict, it is balance, a balance that produces beauty. Again and again, you drift through a region where the clouds fold into one another, an endless, soft interweaving that looks almost like waves rolling over a vast cosmic sea. The rhythm here is slower, gentler, more meditative. The deeper you breathe, the more the motion enters your awareness, like a memory of watching tides, a memory of falling asleep to the sound of rain, a memory of drifting clouds. On a summer afternoon, Jupiter feels like those things, even though it is made entirely of storm and gas, because gravity brings harmony to everything it touches. And harmony, when stretched across time and distance and motion, becomes peace. That peace touches you as you drift. Suddenly, your thoughts begin to sync with the rhythm of the planet. Your breathing slows to match the steady turning of the storms. Your awareness softens into the smooth, unbroken movement of Jupiter's eternal winds. Gravity has become lullaby, not a pull downward, not a force of weight, but a sense of being held, supported, guided, rocked gently, like a child in the cradle of a giant world. You drift into the shadow of Jupiter's night side. Here, the storms continue in darkness. The colors fade into deep navy and charcoal. Lightning flashes silently, far below. They illuminate great columns of cloud, like lanterns held underwater. Each flash is a brief heartbeat in the deep rhythm of the planet. But even without light, you feel the motion continuing. Gravity does not stop in the dark. The storms do not wait for dawn. The moons do not pause. The belts do not freeze. Everything moves on the same beat, a beat you can feel even with your eyes closed. As you drift back into the daylight, on the other side, the colors reappear, first pale, then warm, then vivid. The planet turns beneath you like a slow wheel. The clouds roll, the bands drift. The entire world moves with the grace of a celestial dancer. You realize that the rhythm of gravity does not only belong to Jupiter, it flows through you as well. Your breath is rhythm. Your heartbeat is rhythm. Your sleep is rhythm. And drifting through this place, this quiet realm of swirling storms and lantern-like moons, makes your own rhythms slow, soften, settle. You breathe in, you drift. You breathe out, you rest. Jupiter continues its rotation, steady and unbroken. The moons follow their orbits, timeless and patient, and you drift within the rhythm of a world that has been moving in perfect harmony for billions of years. This is the rhythm of gravity. Slow, deep, ancient, reassuring. A rhythm that holds entire worlds together, and tonight holds you until sleep arrives. When you drift above Jupiter long enough, after you've watched the storms glide beneath your feet, after you've followed the swirling ribbons of cloud as they wrap around the planet's immense body, after you've listened to the soft rhythm of gravity's endless pull, you begin to feel something deeper. A presence, a quiet weight, a depth not made of rock or ocean, but of layers upon layers of gas, descending into pressure, older than any world you've ever known. Jupiter is made of cloud on the outside, storms on the inside, gas deeper still, pressure beneath that, then more pressure, and beneath it all, a silence so absolute that it eclipses everything else. This is the silent heart of the giant, a region that no ship can reach, no probe can survive, no sound can travel through. A realm where matter becomes something unfamiliar, where hydrogen becomes liquid, then metal, and then something beyond metal, something we can only describe, because mathematics whispers it must exist. Tonight, you drift slowly downward toward that impossible interior, not physically, not dangerously, but gently, guided by imagination, and carried by the rhythm of the giant's breath-like storms. You begin where the sunlight still touches the clouds. The colors glow softly, creams, golds, ochres, and the winds move like brushstrokes. Everything is familiar, at least as familiar as Jupiter ever becomes. But as you descend, the light thins, the colors deepen, the motions slow. The topmost clouds are only the beginning. Beneath them lies the first layer of the silent depths. The ammonia clouds fade into thicker, denser ice particles. The wind loses its crisp edges and becomes a heavy flow, moving like slow tides beneath a frozen sea. The deeper you sink, the more muted everything becomes. Light becomes dim, color becomes warm and hazy, motion becomes weight. There is no boundary you can see, no line dividing the bright upper clouds from the darker layers below. Jupiter does not change suddenly. It transitions the way dusk becomes night, slowly, inevitably, peacefully. You drift deeper. Here, the atmosphere is thicker, so thick that the idea of air no longer applies. It is more like a warm, dense fluid that moves in currents shaped by heat rising from below. This region feels ancient. The clouds here have been cycling upward and downward for longer than Earth has existed, rising sinking, warming, cooling, breathing. You drift through these layers, as though moving through a vast, submerged forest, where everything is suspended in slow motion. Above you, faint light filters down, like beams shining through deep ocean water. The clouds glow softly, their edges blurred by the density around you. Below you, a deeper darkness waits. Not threatening, just patient. A giant like Jupiter does not rush to reveal its secrets. As you sink deeper, the pressure thickens. Hydrogen gas compresses into a dense fluid, still transparent, still invisible, but with weight now, with presence. In this region, light barely travels. What little brightness remains is scattered in soft hues of amber and brown, like the dim glow of a lantern wrapped in cloth. The winds here no longer swirl like storms. They flow, long, steady flows, moving with the weight of a slow river. In the deep of night, these currents stretch for thousands of miles, yet move so evenly that you barely sense their motion. You drift lower. The atmosphere becomes darker, warmer, heavier. It feels like sinking into a warm sea, where the water thickens gradually, becoming more like syrup, then oil, then something you can no longer name. Here, the winds fall away. Not entirely. Jupiter never stops moving, but the motion becomes interior, hidden, quiet. It is here you meet the first true silence, not the silence of space, which is empty, not the silence of Europa, which is cold, not the silence of Callisto, which is ancient. This silence is different. It is the silence of pressure, of density, of matter pushed so tightly together that sound cannot travel far, cannot ripple freely, cannot echo. It is the silence of the giant's depth. You drift deeper. The hydrogen becomes so compressed that it behaves like a liquid, a warm, smooth, invisible ocean, without surface or shore. Imagine drifting in fluid air, suspended in a medium that is neither gas nor water, but something beautifully in between. This region is called the liquid hydrogen layer, but names do not matter here. Only the feeling does. The feeling of sinking into a realm that absorbs motion, absorbs sound, absorbs thought. Everything slows here. Everything becomes soft. Everything becomes still. You drift within this liquid atmosphere, like a leaf drifting through warm mist. Nothing resists you. Nothing pulls you. Nothing pushes you. You are held. You are supported by the sheer density of the air itself. You float without effort. You move without force. Here, the storms lose their identity. There are no more spirals, no more bands, no more shapes, only heat rising, only pressure deepening, only smooth, soundless currents. You drift deeper. The temperature rises slowly, not like fire, not like sunlight, but like the faint warmth of a deep cave touched by geothermal breath. The pressure continues to build, but because this is imagination, you feel no pain, no weight, no fear. Only immersion, only presence. Only the giant's heartbeat, felt not as sound, but as the soft vibration of a world turning within itself. Now you enter the realm where hydrogen takes its strangest form, metallic hydrogen, a state of matter, rare in the universe, nearly impossible on Earth, but natural here. In the silent belly of Jupiter, metallic hydrogen is not metal in any familiar sense. It does not shine like steel or clink like iron. It flows. It is a liquid metal, smooth and dense, so compressed that electrons drift freely the way they do through wires. This is the source of Jupiter's magnetic power. Not a core of iron, but this churning sea of metallic hydrogen rotating deep in the giant's interior. You drift near it now, not into it. Its pressure is unimaginable, but close enough to sense the shift. The silence here is absolute, total, complete, perfect. This is not the silence of emptiness. It is the silence of fullness, the silence of a world so dense and so compressed that motion is no longer chaotic. It is ordered, smooth, structured, like currents beneath the calmest lake. On the quietest night, the deeper you drift, the more the motion feels like heartbeat, a planetary pulse, created not by biology, but by physics, a cycle of heat, pressure, and rotation that has existed since Jupiter first formed. This pulse is almost imperceptible, not a thud, not a beat, more like the slow swelling and contracting of an unbelievably vast organism. You drift with it. Your breath slows. Your thoughts soften. Your awareness becomes fluid. Jupiter's depths begin to feel like a place you've known in dreams, a place where sound cannot disturb you, where movement cannot startle you, where nothing exists except temperature, pressure, and calm. You drift deeper. Here, the metallic hydrogen churns slowly, generating electric currents that spiral through the interior and rise outward as a powerful magnetic field. You cannot see these currents. You cannot touch them, but you can feel the suggestion of them, a faint hum with no sound, a vibration without force. It moves through you, like the memory of a distant ocean wave. This, too, is part of Jupiter's silent depths. Even the forces that drive storms and shape moons and hold particles in orbit are quiet here, like ancient machinery, working far below consciousness. You drift through a region where the metallic hydrogen begins to transition again, becoming denser, warmer, deeper. This is the deepest region we can describe with certainty. Below this, the physics becomes a kind of soft speculation, not because it is unknowable, but because the pressures and temperatures exceed what human minds can fully imagine. Some believe there is a core, not iron, not rock, but a heavy, quiet center made of compressed elements, carbon, oxygen, silicon, pressed into a solid form. Others believe the core dissolved long ago into the metallic hydrogen sea, that Jupiter's interior is a gradient, not a boundary. Either way, there is a region so deep and so silent that everything else seems noisy by comparison. You drift toward that conceptual core, not physically, but imaginatively. Here, everything becomes dark. Not empty dark, not frightening dark, but warm dark, dense dark, comforting dark. The dark you feel when you close your eyes and let your mind drift inward. In this darkness, you sense the giant's memory. Not memory as humans know it, not language or story, but the memory of formation, the memory of collapsing gas, of dust spiraling into heat, of millions of years, of gathering mass, of the slow birth of storms, of moons drifting into place. This memory hums through the depths like a low, constant whisper, a whisper that says, I have existed since the beginning. I have changed slowly. I have endured everything. I am quiet. Because nothing disturbs me. I am deep. Because nothing limits me. Rest within me and feel time stretch. You drift in that whisper. You drift in that darkness. You drift in the warm, dense silence of a world that has never known solid ground. Nothing here startles you. Nothing interrupts you. Nothing pulls you back to the surface. You float in a place where pressure replaces sound, where density replaces motion, where the concept of inside blurs with the concept of below. This is Jupiter's true body. Not storms, not clouds, not colors, but depth, infinite, silent, warm, heavy, calming depth. As you drift in this pocket of quiet, you begin to feel your own depth, your own stillness, your own silence. Your breathing slows, your mind loosens, your thoughts dissolve into the background. You are no longer above Jupiter. You are within Jupiter, not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, in the way one can be within a mood or within a dream. You drift with the density. You drift with the pressure. You drift with the silence. And then, gently, the ascent begins. Not quickly, not abruptly, just a slow rise. Back through the metallic hydrogen sea, back through the liquid molecular layer, back through the thickening fog of deeper clouds. Colors return: amber, gold, ivory, cream. Light returns, dim at first, filtered by miles of atmosphere, then brighter as you rise. The storms return, vaster from below, softer from above. The winds return, their rhythm familiar now, like a tide you forgot was carrying you. Finally, the upper clouds appear again. The swirling bands, the gentle storms, the calm ribbons of drifting gas. You break through the last layer, like rising from warm water. Jupiter's upper world spreads beneath you again, vast and serene, the storms moving slowly, in patterns older than memory. And you realize that everything above, the storms, the bands, the colors, all of it, is powered by the silence below. The silent depths teach Jupiter how to breathe, how to move, how to thunder without violence, how to persist without rushing, how to exist in endless balance. You drift above the giant now, carrying the quiet of its depths within you. A quiet that softens thought, a quiet that eases breath, a quiet that feels like sleep waiting to happen. Because Jupiter, deep beneath its storms, is not chaos. It is calm. It is pressure. It is warmth. It is silence. The silent depths of a giant, a place where even storms are shaped by stillness. And as you drift away, the silence follows you, soft and heavy, pulling you gently toward rest, toward quiet, toward sleep. In the deep quiet of the solar system, where light thins into pale threads and time stretches into long, slow breaths, Jupiter does more than simply exist. It influences. It protects. It sculpts. It reshapes the history of everything around it. Jupiter is not merely a planet. It is a force. A world so massive and so ancient that its very presence has shaped the fates of other worlds. You drift above the giant now, hovering in the soft glow of its upper clouds, and the longer you rest here, the more you begin to feel that influence. It hums beneath everything. It rests in the space between storms. It fills the emptiness around the moons. It stretches outward in every direction like invisible threads, holding the solar system together. Jupiter is not just part of the solar system. It is one of the reasons the solar system looks the way it does. Tonight, you drift through that influence, calmly, slowly, letting gravity's invisible hands guide you. The story begins long ago, in a time before planets had names, before the sun had cleared the dust from its cradle, before any world had settled into the shape we know today. The early solar system was chaos. Not chaos of noise, there was no sound, but chaos of motion. Dust, gas, ice, and rock tumbled through a vast, swirling disk. Clusters collided. Fragments shattered. New pieces formed. Old ones dissolved. It was a place of endless movement, endless fragmentation, endless creation. And in that shifting canvas of early debris, Jupiter formed, not quietly, but steadily. As its mass grew, its gravity deepened, a gravitational well so profound that it began to redirect the very architecture of the solar system. You drift above the swirling clouds, and though this world seems calm now, its influence has always stretched far beyond its storms. Jupiter shaped the fates of worlds yet unborn. Imagine tiny protoplanets drifting through the early disk. Pieces of rock trying to gather more rock, trying to become something larger, something round, something whole. Some succeeded. Earth, Venus, Mars. But many others never got the chance, because Jupiter's gravity, immense, patient, and constant, stirred the disk so powerfully that many developing worlds were scattered, their growth interrupted, their paths forever changed. Jupiter prevented a planet from forming. In the region that is now the asteroid belt, the rocks there tried. They collided and clustered and squeezed. But each time they began to gather, Jupiter tugged, Jupiter shook. Jupiter pulled pieces away. What remained was not a world, but a field of broken hopes. Millions of fragments, trapped in a gravitational struggle, frozen for billions of years. You drift through imagination's vision of that ancient era, dust swirling like golden mist, rocks moving through half-formed orbits, gas shimmering in the faint newborn sunlight. Jupiter moved through this early chaos, like a giant walking through water. Everything around it stirred. The giant shaped the belt. It shaped the flow of comets. It shaped the orbits of small worlds. And then it shaped the outer solar system, pushing material outward. until it collected into the icy realms beyond. Without Jupiter, Saturn may not have formed where it is. Uranus might have drifted differently. Neptune might have wandered far from its current home. Jupiter became the anchor, the gravitational heart, around which the solar system found its order. You drift just above the cloud tops and feel that weight, not on your body, but on your sense of awe. Because Jupiter's story does not end with shaping the ancient world. It continues. Even now, every comet that enters the solar system, every icy visitor from the deep, feels Jupiter's pull. Some are redirected, some are ejected, some are sent inward, some are captured. Jupiter has cleared the solar system of countless dangerous objects that might have struck Earth. In a quiet, indirect way, Jupiter has protected your planet from impacts that could have ended stories before they began. It is difficult to imagine a world so far away playing such a role in life on Earth, but it does. Every gentle breath humans take is part of a chain of events shaped by gravity long before humans existed. You drift deeper into Jupiter's shadow and think about how quietly the giant has influenced everything around it. Not through violence, not through noise, but through steady presence. Jupiter's gravity has the strength to slingshot asteroids and redirect comets, to tear small bodies apart, and to hold others close. Its influence extends, not just in space, but in time. Even Earth's oceans, the water that fills them, may owe their origins, in part, to Jupiter's migration through the early solar system. Some theories suggest that as Jupiter moved through the protoplanetary disk, it nudged icy bodies inward, sending water-rich asteroids toward the young Earth. If so, then the waves that crash on Earth's shores, the rivers that wind through continents, the raindrops that fall on forests, the water that shapes life, all may carry the signature of Jupiter's ancient path. A giant made of storms, helping a tiny world become a home. You drift above Jupiter and feel the poetry of that connection. This world does not know Earth. It does not understand life. It has no awareness of its own influence. But influence does not require intention. Gravity simply acts, and through that action, it shapes everything. You drift past Io again, its volcanic surface glowing softly. Here, too, Jupiter's power is visible. The moon's interior is molten because Jupiter's gravity stretches it, squeezes it, and heats it from within, like clay being kneaded by giant hands. Io is a world of fire because Jupiter exists. You drift past Europa, quiet, icy, smooth. Its hidden ocean is kept warm by the same gravitational rhythm, the constant flexing, that stirs its interior and prevents its ocean from freezing solid. Europa is a world of possibility because Jupiter stirs it gently. You drift past Ganymede, the only moon with a magnetic field, a moon with a molten core, sustained partly by gravitational interactions. And Callisto, old, quiet Callisto, its ancient craters preserved because it does not feel the same tugging, the same heating, the same restlessness. Even the differences between the moons tell the story of Jupiter's influence. The closer a moon is to the giant, the stronger its tidal forces. The more heating it feels, the more activity it endures. The farther it drifts, the quieter it becomes. More ancient, more still. A gradient of worlds, from fire to ocean to ice to silence, all sculpted by distance. From Jupiter's gravity, you drift through this hierarchy and feel the structure of it, the elegance of it, the order of it. This is not chaos. It is a system, a family, a pattern dance. Guided by the giant at its center, gravity shapes each moon differently, but all of them together shape Jupiter's world as well. Io's volcanic plumes feed material into the faint rings. Europa's ice reflects sunlight onto Jupiter's shadowed face. Ganymede's magnetosphere interacts with Jupiter's own. Callisto drifts like a quiet outer guardian. The moons are shaped by the giant, but they also shape it in return, just as children shape their parents. As much as parents shape them, you drift outward to see the entire system again. Jupiter in the middle, the moons in wide arcs around it, their shadows drifting across its swirling clouds, their gravitational pulls tugging softly at its atmosphere, its magnetosphere brushing theirs, its storms reflecting their light. It is a complete, interconnected world, a world of worlds, a system where everything moves in relation to everything else, a world that shapes worlds, a world shaped by worlds. And the more you drift, the more you feel the intricacy of this cosmic tapestry. There is nothing rushed, nothing forced, nothing out of place. Even the long, looping paths of comets that pass through Jupiter's realm follow the pattern. Some are captured, some are deflected, some are destroyed, some are gently guided outward to return centuries later. Jupiter's influence extends into the Kuiper Belt, into the Oort cloud, into regions so distant that sunlight takes hours to reach them. It is almost impossible to imagine the scale of such gravitational presence. And yet, here you are, floating above the giant, feeling the softness of its clouds, watching the slow drift of its moons, resting inside its quiet rhythm. This world, this giant, this shaper of worlds, is not violent. It is gentle. Its gravity is steady. Its influence is patient. Its presence is calming. You drift downward into the dim haze above the giant's cloud tops. There is no sound, but you can almost feel the weight of Jupiter's ancient influence settling into you, just as it has settled into every moon and every comet and every orbit for billions of years. Jupiter is not loud, but it is powerful, not chaotic, but meaningful, not solitary, but surrounded by worlds that glow like lanterns. In its vast shadow, this planet, this gas giant, has shaped destinies without ever trying. And tonight, as you drift in its silent embrace, you feel shaped too, softly, gently, like a thought, finding its true place. Earth exists, in part because Jupiter watched over the early chaos. Europa's ocean exists because Jupiter stirs it. Io's fire burns because Jupiter pulls it. Comets follow paths that Jupiter bends. Asteroids remain small because Jupiter denied them a world. Saturn's orbit settled because Jupiter paved the way. Jupiter is not just a world. It is a sculptor, a shaper, a guardian, a quiet giant whose influence has reached every corner of the solar system. And now, in this calm moment, you drift within its influence too. You breathe slowly, deeply, softly. You feel the rhythm of gravity settling into your thoughts, guiding them, slowing them, easing them, lulling them. This giant has shaped worlds, and now it shapes your rest. Jupiter turns slowly below you, its bands drifting, its storms sliding, its moons gliding in their ancient paths. And as the giant rotates, its quiet, gravitational poetry rocks you gently toward sleep. On Jupiter, twilight does not come with the softness of an earthly sunset. There is no horizon to glow red, no mountains to cast long shadows, no oceans to reflect fading gold. The planet has no surface, no solid ground to hold the moment still. And yet, Jupiter has a twilight all its own, a twilight that floats, a twilight that drifts, a twilight that stretches like a quiet veil across the boundary between day and night. Tonight, you drift into that strange, gentle boundary, the edge of twilight. The giant turns slowly beneath you, and as it rotates, one half of the world slips into shadow, while the other emerges into diluted sunlight. There is no sharp line between the two. The transition is gradual, like dimming a lamp with a velvet cloth. You hover above the curve of the planet, where day becomes night and night becomes day. This region is called the Terminator, but the name feels too sharp for something so soft. Here, colors fade rather than change. Light thins rather than disappears. Shadows stretch into long, gentle gradients that deepen into quiet darkness. Twilight on Jupiter is not a moment. It is a place, a vast belt of shifting shadow that wraps the giant. Like the hem of a robe, you drift along this twilight edge, letting the softness of the light carry you forward. The day side of Jupiter glows in creams, golds, and swirling amber. The storms are fully illuminated, their shapes sharp and clear. Clouds sparkle faintly, with iced ammonia crystals catching the distant sunlight. But as you drift toward the boundary, those colors begin to dim, not fade away. Dim. The clouds take on muted shades, soft tans, pale ochres, like brushstrokes touched with a thin glaze. The shadows deepen along the swirling belts, giving them new dimensions, depth where there was brightness, mystery where there was clarity. The light becomes angled, skimmed across the tops of clouds, highlighting their ridges, their folds, their subtle textures that daytime washes away. Storms that looked flat now appear sculpted. The curves of bands become gentle hills. The swirls become valleys. The great red spot glows faintly like a lantern. In the warm half-light, everything you saw before takes on a new personality here. Quieter, more contemplative, more intimate. Then you cross the boundary. The light thins to a whisper. Colors retreat into bronze and charcoal. the atmosphere becomes a canvas, painted with shadows, instead of storms. But the twilight does not feel dark. It feels soft, as if Jupiter itself is exhaling. You drift deeper into the shadowed region. Here, the storms still move, but their shapes are more felt than seen. They drift in the dimness, like giants beneath the surface of a deep sea. Every so often, a faint glow ripples across the cloud tops, a subtle flash of lightning from below, a hidden flicker of energy. Rising from the depths, these distant lightning strokes are not sharp like Earth's. They are muted by the weight of atmosphere, blurred by layers of gas, seen as pale pulses that illuminate entire regions, like soft lanterns glowing behind fog. Deep in the night hemisphere, another glow appears. Not lightning, but something stranger. Auroras. Jupiter's magnetic field sweeps charged particles into the poles, creating luminous ovals that shimmer like ghostly crowns. These auroras do not flicker the way Earth's do. They burn steadily, a soft ring of blue and violet, etched into the upper atmosphere. Imagine a curtain of light, gently swaying in the wind, except there is no wind here, no sound, only movement too slow to see. You drift along the twilight, toward the North Pole, and the aurora grows brighter. It shimmers above the clouds in a gentle, hypnotic glow. The light is quiet. All light on Jupiter is quiet, but twilight captures it in a special way. It softens it, diffuses it, spreads it across the atmosphere until it looks like the sky itself is dreaming. As you drift, Jupiter's rotation carries the rings of light across your field of view. They look like floating halos or glowing rivers in the sky. You breathe deeply. The twilight feels like a place where thoughts slow down, where the day's chaos dissolves, where even the storms seem to rest. You let yourself sink into that feeling, far beneath the clouds. In the deeper layers you explored before, the giant's warmth continues to rise. It pushes through the atmosphere in currents that stir the winds and shape the storms. Even here, in the dim half-night, those motions continue, slowly, softly, silently. You drift a little lower, and the twilight paints new patterns across the swirling clouds. There are regions where the light glides across the cloud tops in long streaks, shadows cast sideways by tall towers of rising gas. Other regions darken into swirling pits, their depths revealed, not by light, but by the absence of it. Jupiter's twilight is a geography of tone rather than shape. You drift above a particularly serene region where the light spreads thinly over wide, smooth clouds. They look like waves in a shallow sea. At dusk, the winds move them gently. The shadows stretch long and thin. It is a landscape made of softness. Then you drift into a darker region. Here, the twilight deepens into night. The dayside feels far away, a memory fading behind the curve of the planet. But night on Jupiter is not black. The planet glows faintly with its own internal warmth, a warmth that seeps upward through the layers of gas and creates a subtle radiance in the night-side atmosphere. It is like drifting through the afterglow of a star that never fully formed. The deeper the night becomes, the more the details vanish into smooth gradients of shadow. Here, in the deepest part of twilight, you feel the stillness settle around you. Even the storms move quietly. Their edges soften, their spirals fade, their motions become a slow, deep pulse. You drift forward until the dayside begins to appear again on the horizon. A thin line of pale light forms across the curve of the planet. Dawn. But Jupiter's dawn is not sudden. It is a quiet returning. The first rays barely pierce the thick atmosphere. Instead, they spread laterally across the cloud tops, glowing like embers. At this angle, the smallest ripples in the clouds become visible, highlighted in gold. Dawn on Jupiter is a revelation of texture. The light sweeps across the tops of storms and reveals new shapes, delicate ridges, small curls, soft indentations that the brighter day hides. The deeper you drift into the new daylight, the more vibrant the planet becomes. The twilight dissolves into full color. Browns, creams, golds, whites, flushed with warm tones. The dayside awakens gently. The storms regain their definition. The bands stretch clearly, from horizon to horizon. And yet, the memory of twilight remains. The softness, the dimness, the quiet pulse of shadow lingers in your thoughts, as if the giant's calm has settled inside you. You decide to drift deeper into the twilight again, back into the borderland, between night and day. The experience changes, depending on where you cross. Near the equator, the twilight spreads evenly, a band of warm dimness, with rippled clouds and soft, layered shadows. Farther north, the twilight grows turbulent, not violently, but gracefully. The polar storms twist into fractal shapes, their arms spiraling with elegant complexity. In twilight, these shapes look like ink swirling in water. At the very poles, twilight dances with auroras. The storms rise like great pillars, and the aurora light floods their edges. With blue-white glow, you drift among them, like floating through a field of luminous sculptures. Some storms are tall, some are shallow, some swirl in circles, some drift sideways, but all of them move with the same slow rhythm, the same quiet cadence that defines Jupiter. In twilight, the storms look like they are dreaming. You drift back to the equatorial twilight and settle in its calm. The light here is warm and honeyed, the shadows shallow and long, the winds slower. Jupiter's twilight is the closest thing this world has to serenity, a place where storms soften, where day dims, where night warms, where everything feels suspended between motion and stillness. And you, drifting quietly, feel suspended too. You breathe slowly, deeply, the way Jupiter breathes when storms move beneath shadow, the way the winds breathe, in soft, layered patterns, the way twilight breathes across a world that has no ground and no sunset. You close your eyes for a moment and feel the giant's rotation carry you across the boundary once more. Light brightens, light dims, shadows stretch, Shadows disappear, and still, the planet turns, slow, steady, immense. The twilight travels with it, a permanent ring of softness that encircles the planet forever. Here, at the edge of light, you feel time loosen, your thoughts drift, your mind eases into stillness. Jupiter's twilight is a place between waking and dreaming, a living metaphor for the state your body seeks when sleep begins to settle, a place where motion becomes meditation, where color becomes breath, where the quiet of the giant wraps around you like a soft blanket made of shadow and light. Tonight, you drift in this soft borderland, the edge of twilight, until it becomes your own. There are places in the universe where dreams feel possible, where the natural world grows so large, so ancient, so quiet, that your own thoughts begin to dissolve into something softer, slower, and deeply restful. Jupiter is one of those places, not because it sleeps. A giant made of storms never truly rests, but because its scale, its patterns, its motions, its rhythms, all combine into a world that feels like a dream, more than a place. Tonight, you drift into that dream, not as an explorer, not as an astronaut, not even as a witness, but as someone willing to drift, slowly, gently, into the presence of a giant. Jupiter moves beneath you, its vast body turning with calm precision. The clouds flow like endless rivers of silk. The storms rotate like thoughts, circling quietly beneath the mind's surface. You feel no urgency here, no pressure to understand, no need to analyze. You are simply drifting, drifting with a giant that has been dreaming since time began. The first dream you encounter is the dream of motion. Jupiter's atmosphere moves, not with chaos, but with an ancient rhythm. Every swirl, every band, every curve flows the way memories do, slowly, softly, folding over themselves. In gentle repetition, you watch a pale cloud wrap around the curve of the planet, its tail curling into a spiral that glows faintly. In the diluted sunlight, this cloud has drifted for months, maybe years, and now it drifts past you like a thought passing through the mind of the giant. Deeper below, larger storms rotate in silence. But from here, from this high, drifting vantage, they do not seem like storms. They seem like dreams, circular and patient, turning without urgency. In the warm currents below, you drift closer to one of these storms, a pale oval roughly the size of a continent. It spins with a hypnotic grace, its edges curving inward, like the petals of a slowly blooming flower. The center glows warmly, in hues of ivory and cream. The outer edges darken into amber and soft burnt orange. Nothing about this storm feels threatening. It feels thoughtful, reflective, a dream stirring gently. In the deeper layers of the planet, you drift above it, letting its rotation lull your breath into the same slow rhythm. The swirl becomes a mandala, one of nature's largest and oldest patterns, drawn not by intention, but by physics and time. This is the dream of motion, a dream Jupiter has had for billions of years, and tonight you drift within it, As you rise again into the twilight, another dream unfolds. The dream of memory. It is impossible to look at Jupiter and not feel time stretch around you. The storms have existed longer than entire eras on Earth. Some clouds that drift beneath you began their journey before the first forests grew on your planet. The great red spot has been turning since the age of Galileo. This world remembers things. The way stones remember pressure, the way oceans remember tides, the way ancient winds remember mountains, long since eroded. Jupiter remembers. The early solar system, the swirling disk of dust and gas, the collisions, the quiet forming of planets, the drifting of moons, the long, slow cooling of everything. As you drift above the giant, you sense these memories, not in words, but in the soft heaviness of the atmosphere below. These clouds have turned through eras too deep to count. Their patterns shape the lives of moons, the paths of comets, the evolution of everything that orbits near them. Jupiter does not dream of the future. It dreams of the past, of the time when it formed, of the time when it stirred the early solar system into its current shape. You drift through that memory, imagining the quiet collapse of gas into a warm, forming world, imagining the dust swirling inward, imagining the first storms forming in the newborn atmosphere. It is not an exciting memory, not dramatic, not fiery. It is calm, like watching clouds form. On a warm, slow afternoon, you drift within that memory, like a thought in the giant's ancient mind. When you rise again, another dream approaches. The dream of stillness. It seems impossible that a world made entirely of storms can feel still. But Jupiter's scale creates a strange illusion. When storms are large enough, when winds stretch for hundreds of miles, when motions take days or weeks to complete a single rotation, stillness becomes relative. You drift above a region where the clouds appear almost motionless, pale beige, soft white, faint amber, a smooth gradient of color with no obvious shape. But beneath this apparent calm, massive winds slide past each other at hundreds of miles per hour. Yet they look still, still in the way distant waves on an ocean look still from high above, still in the way clouds look motionless until you watch them for long enough. You drift into this deceptive stillness, feeling your own mind begin to mimic it. Thoughts slow, breath deepens, awareness softens. This calm is not the absence of movement. It is movement so large and so smooth that it feels like rest. You drift deeper into that sensation until the storms below become background, until the colors blur softly into a warm haze. This is the dream of stillness, a dream Jupiter teaches to anyone who drifts long enough among its slow-moving clouds. The next dream you encounter is the dream of light. Jupiter's light is not like Earth's. The sun is far away here, so the light arrives thin and cool, like a pale memory of brightness. But the atmosphere does something magical with it. It bends the light, scatters it, softens it. The result is a world bathed in perpetual dawn, a world where colors glow with restraint, as if painted by a hand that prefers quiet beauty over brilliance. You drift near the terminator again, the border between day and night, and watch the light spill across the clouds in soft gradients. The high clouds catch the sunlight first, glowing like pale gold. Deeper clouds remain dim, bronze and charcoal. The transition is slow, smooth, like dimming a lantern, rather than switching off a light. The light bends around storms, creating thin halos around their edges. Even the great red spot glimmers faintly at its rim. As the twilight glow brushes across it, you drift through shafts of golden light that shine between cloud towers. Some beams stretch for thousands of miles, yet remain soft, warm, gentle. Jupiter dreams in gold, not bright gold, not shining gold, but muted, drowsy gold, the color of a peaceful evening. Long after the sun has set, you drift within these beams, letting the thick atmosphere filter the light through layers of soft haze. The light feels warm, like a memory of sunlight, rather than sunlight itself. This is the dream of light, a dream Jupiter has every time it turns beneath the distant sun. And now you drift into yet another dream, the dream of shadow. On Jupiter, shadows are vast. Shadows become landscapes. Storms cast shadows that stretch for hundreds of miles. Cloud towers cast shadows, like cliffs in a world without ground. When you drift into one of these shadows, the world softens even further. The colors deepen. The winds seem more distant. The entire atmosphere becomes a dark, gentle sea. Lightning from below illuminates the shadowed layers with silent flashes, brief, pale pulses that reveal enormous structures deep inside the clouds. But the light disappears as quickly as it appears, leaving only darkness and softness. Jupiter dreams in shadow as easily as it dreams in light. You drift in that darkness, feeling every part of you slow down. Here, thoughts become whispers, memories become silhouettes, awareness becomes a gentle hum beneath the quiet. This is the dream of shadow, soft, warm, comforting in its depth. You drift through it like drifting through a deep ocean, with no fear of drowning. Then, slowly, the next dream rises, the dream of companionship. For Jupiter is not alone. Its moons drift through its shadow. Its rings glow faintly with reflected light. Its magnetic field brushes past. Every moon in the system. The moons dream with the giant. Io dreams in fire. Europa dreams in water. Ganymede dreams in quiet magnetism. Callisto dreams in ancient ice. All of them drift together in slow, wide orbits. A family of worlds held in place by the giant's calm, steady pull. You drift among them, feeling their presence, like lanterns floating around a sleeping traveler. Each moon glows faintly. In Jupiter's soft reflected light, each one adds a small whisper to the giant's dream. Together, they form a dreamscape, stretching millions of miles, a dream that moves, not through imagination, but through gravity. This dream of companionship is quiet, comforting, and infinite. As you drift deeper, into the giant's presence, you finally reach Jupiter's most intimate dream, the dream of eternity. Nothing here moves quickly. Nothing changes abruptly. Nothing fades completely. Storms last centuries. Clouds circle the planet for years on end. Moons keep their orbits almost unchanged. For billions of years, Jupiter is timeless. Not because time does not pass here, but because time flows the way the clouds flow. Long, smooth, unbroken. The giant dreams in timescales. Your mind is not built to grasp. And yet, drifting here, you feel it. Not intellectually, but emotionally, physically, viscerally. You feel yourself soften into that long, slow rhythm. Your breath deepens. Your awareness loosens. Your thoughts stretch into long, quiet threads. You feel what it means for a world to dream across billions of years. A dream of storms turning. A dream of clouds flowing. A dream of moons drifting. A dream of quietly shaping the entire solar system. You drift in that dream until you cannot tell where the planet ends and your mind begins. You drift until your heartbeat matches the slow pulse of the giant below. You drift until your thoughts move like the clouds, unhurried, unconflicted, soft. And in this state, half wake, half dream, you realize something. Jupiter does not sleep, but it can help you sleep. Its storms, its twilight, its rhythms, its depth, its gravity, its calm, all of it wraps around you like a soft blanket. You are dreaming with a giant, not of the giant, with it. And the giant's dream is long, warm, slow, endless, comforting, perfect for letting your consciousness drift gently into rest. Tonight, Jupiter dreams, and you drift within its dream until sleep finds you, soft as a cloud and ancient as time. There comes a moment, after drifting through Jupiter's storms, after floating along its twilight edges, after listening to the slow breath of its ancient rhythms, when you begin to feel that the giant beneath you is not merely a world, it is an experience, a presence, a vast, quiet companion, existing in a deep silence that cannot be spoken or measured or fully understood. And in this final part of the journey, you drift into that silence, the silence that wraps the entire planet, the silence that has existed since long before Earth was born, the silence that will continue long after the last human memory fades. This is the giant that sleeps in silence. Even from far above, you feel something shift as you move into the darker regions of Jupiter's night hemisphere. The sunlight behind you dims until it becomes nothing more than a pale echo on the horizon. Ahead, the planet disappears into shadow. Not a harsh shadow, but a warm, deep, enveloping darkness. The storms continue below. The winds continue to flow. The rotations continue their ancient cycles. But all of it, every motion, every swirl, every ripple, moves without sound, not quiet, soundless. The deeper you drift, the more profound that silence becomes. A silence so complete that it begins to feel physical, like something you can drift through, touch, rest upon. Jupiter's silence is not empty space. It is fullness. It is depth. It is the absence of everything that distracts, the absence of everything that pulls your mind away. From stillness, it holds you like warm darkness holds a dream. You drift through the upper haze of the nightside clouds, and the last traces of sunlight fade behind you. The dim glow of Jupiter's internal warmth rises from below, a faint amber radiance that illuminates the clouds, like embers beneath a blanket of ash. In this glow, the clouds take on smoother shapes. The sharp edges of storms disappear. The swirling bands flatten into soft gradients of brown, gold, and charcoal. Jupiter's night is not black. It is warm, dense, and serene. You drift lower into this calm nocturnal ocean. Lightning flickers deep within the clouds, not sharp, not bright, but softened by layers of gas. Each flash looks like a lantern, glowing behind thick curtains. The light spreads slowly, filling the depth beneath you with quiet pulse. Between these flashes, the darkness settles again, smooth and quiet as velvet. There are moments when the silence feels so complete that even your own thoughts seem to slow down. You stop remembering. You stop anticipating. You stop thinking in words. You simply float. Jupiter is the largest world in our solar system, a giant of storms, of tides, of deep hidden currents, a giant that shapes moons, reshapes orbits, guards the inner planets with its immense gravity. And yet, despite its power, despite its magnitude, the most striking thing about this world is how silent it is. No air to carry sound, no ground to echo it, no surface to break it, only layers upon layers of quiet. Deep beneath you, the storms continue, but you cannot hear them. You cannot feel their turbulence. You cannot sense their violence. You see only their movement, slow, gentle, like thoughts drifting across a dreaming mind. It becomes easy to imagine that Jupiter sleeps, not literally. A gas giant does not wake or sleep, but metaphorically, emotionally, poetically. It sleeps in the way a mountain seems to sleep. Beneath drifting clouds, it sleeps in the way deep oceans appear calm, even while currents stir below. It sleeps in the way a flame flickers slowly. In a quiet room, Jupiter sleeps in the way only a giant can sleep, with storms still moving, with winds still flowing, with lightning still flashing, but with a quietness that stretches across everything. You drift even deeper into the silent hemisphere, letting the planet surround you with its vast, peaceful presence. Occasionally, you catch the faint silhouette of a moon passing overhead, casting a soft shadow across the cloud tops. These shadows move like slow floating leaves, barely perceptible, barely there. Every moon that crosses the night side looks like a small lantern moving across an endless dusk. Their motions are soothing, predictable, gentle. Jupiter's silence is not lonely, it is shared. You drift along the night side until the entire planet below you looks like a single, slow-breathing organism. Clouds rising and falling in long, rolling waves, storms rotating like old memories, light flickering softly from within. The deeper you sink into this world, the slower everything becomes. Your breath, your heartbeat, your thoughts, your awareness. Jupiter's quiet is contagious. You drift farther until you reach the terminator again, the boundary between night and dawn. Here, the silence feels different. Not heavier, not thicker, more anticipatory. A quiet waiting. The first hint of sunlight touches the tops of clouds in a thin, glimmering line. It is not enough light to brighten the world, only enough to paint its edges. Storms reveal faint outlines. Bands glow faintly. The great red spot becomes a shadowed oval, waiting for the day to return. In this dim borderland, you feel the giant's silence, holding its breath, not literally, figuratively, emotionally. A world that never stops moving can still hold a moment of pause. You drift slowly along this boundary. The sunlight touches the atmosphere in long, drawn-out gradients. You watch the day return. It does not rise. It spreads. Warm light spills across the giant, like soft milk poured gently over a vast bowl. Clouds brighten. Storm edges sharpen. The great red spot reveals its colors again. Rust, rose, coral, clay. But even in daylight, the silence remains. On Jupiter, there is no noise, only movement. And movement, when stretched across such scale, when slowed by distance and depth, creates its own stillness. You drift upward now, rising above the twilight zone, above the topmost clouds, above the thin haze that marks the end of the visible atmosphere. From here, Jupiter becomes whole again, a complete sphere of flowing color. The storms are gentle spirals. The bands are calm rivers of gas. The terminator is a soft curve. The night side is a warm, smooth shadow. The day side is a muted amber glow. And in the space surrounding the planet, nothing disturbs you. Nothing pulls at you. Nothing rushes you. Nothing demands your attention. You drift in pure, undisturbed calm. The moons move in slow arcs around the planet. Io glowing faintly. Europa shining like a pearl. Ganymede pale as old stone. Callisto dark as ancient ice. Each moon follows its own orbit, but all of them move. Within Jupiter's silent influence, they drift, like lanterns, around a sleeping giant. You drift with them now, as though the entire Jovian system has invited you to join its quiet choreography. Far below, Jupiter turns slowly, its storms tracing patterns that have existed for longer than all of human time. And you realize something simple, yet profound. Jupiter is not asleep. Jupiter is the sleep. It is the feeling of sinking into something larger than yourself. The feeling of drifting with no fear of falling. The feeling of silence that does not isolate, but comforts. The feeling of stillness that does not freeze, but soothes. The feeling of motion, so soft and so slow that it becomes a kind of rest. Jupiter embodies the state that comes just before dreams, the warm, heavy quiet, where thoughts loosen and consciousness fades. You drift a little farther until the planet below shrinks slightly in your field of view, like a glowing ember floating in the deep black of space. It is enormous. It is powerful. It is ancient. But from this distance, it looks peaceful. A giant wrapped in its own silence. A giant that sleeps without sleeping. A giant that rests without stopping. A giant that calms simply by existing. As you drift back into the space above Jupiter, your breath aligns with the planet's rhythm. Slow, deep, even. You feel gravity's quiet pull as a soft reminder that everything in the universe, every storm, every moon, every drifting thought, follows cycles, patterns, repeating rhythms that continue long after we fall asleep. Jupiter's silence is the universe's silence. A silence older than life, older than planets, older than stars. A silence that holds everything, without question, without effort, without judgment. You rest in that silence now. The giant turns beneath you. The moons drift beside you. The stars watch from above. And your mind loosens gently into the same stillness that has wrapped Jupiter for billions of years. Tonight, you sleep within the embrace of a silent giant. Tonight, you drift in the quiet gravity of a world that shapes worlds. Tonight, you rest in the deep, ancient calm of Jupiter's endless night. Close your eyes. Let your breath soften. Let the silence deepen. Let the giant's slow, steady presence carry you into sleep. The journey is complete. The silence is warm. The giant is peaceful. And now, so are you.